Hello everyone, I have just read chapter 1 of Last of the Jedi Reckoning. It's both exciting and a bit saddening to be on the last book of the series. So Ferus is on the planet of either Kayak or Kayuk. Or Kayuk? K-A-Y-U-K. He's finally able to speak the words that have been haunting him since he left Alderaan to Obi-Wan. And he says Darth Vader's Anakin Skywalker. I told you, taking him days to communicate to Obi-Wan, but he's been able to get back to him on their emergency channel. And Obi-Wan, of course, he's not fazed by the information. He remains neutral and just asks what makes Ferus think so. And Ferus starts thinking about all the ways, starts thinking about everything, wondering where to start. Because he needs to present the mix of facts and the guesswork and the instincts. And then he realises there's another revelation there. Obi-Wan already knows. And he just says, "You knew!" And Obi-Wan says nothing. And again, Ferus wants to fling the comm link away. But he says he walks in the circle and kicks a stone, which is, of course, is very un-Jedi-like behaviour, but also kind of very Anakin behaviour, if you ask me. And Ferus asks why Obi-Wan didn't tell him once he finally was able to calm himself enough to speak. And Obi-Wan starts saying Ferus, but Ferus cuts in and says, "Don't you think it would have helped if I knew?" And Obi-Wan says he doesn't see why. And he says, "So think about it. What difference does it make now that you know who he is? There's nothing left of Anakin. He died the day he crossed the dark side of the Force. And it was better for him to not have that information, as it could have endangered him, and it was enough that Obi-Wan knew." And the way Obi-Wan's speaking stops Ferus in his tracks, and he can still tell the pain of Anakin's turn is still there in Obi-Wan. And he can feel that, despite the large distance between them, he can feel it. And he wonders how it must have felt for Obi-Wan to lose his student. And he asks Obi-Wan why he did it, and Obi-Wan says he has his theories and he can't know for certain, but he believes Palpatine has been manipulating him for some time, planting seeds, and says that's the way the Sith operate, and Anakin himself. And he looks away to the sandy expanse of Tatooine and he says, "To have so many gifts, to be the chosen one, to be so afraid of loss." And he looks back at Ferus and says, "And to have a master and to have me as a master." And he says in the end there were things between them he didn't even realise was there, and he doesn't have an answer to why he turned, and he can only ask himself that question over and over. And Ferus asks if there's anything else he's keeping from him, and Obi-Wan says there are things he can't discuss, and things that he maybe should tell him after his mission with the Empire is complete, and he needs to leave the Empire. And Ferus says he's not... No, after he leaves the Empire. And Ferus says he's not part of the Empire, and Obi-Wan retaliates with, "You're a double agent. You have contact with the Sith, with the Emperor, and until you leave his influence, you aren't safe." And Ferus says he's not under his influence. And he has to stop an impulse to reach for the holocron in his tunic. To touch the holocron in his tunic that the Emperor gave to him, and that so far he hasn't accessed it, but he could still feel it in the hidden pocket, and felt like it was growing heavier every day and burning against his skin at night. And Obi-Wan's concerned about Ferus. He is concerned, and he says to Ferus that it's time to leave. It is past time, and he's sensing a disturbance in him. He tells him to leave the Empire, come to Tatooine, and they should discuss what is best for him. And the holocron says, "I don't need your advice, look where it got you." And it says, The voice rose from his chest. It was stopped by his teeth. Lately this voice had appeared in him, and he knew it was tied to the Sith Holocron. He wasn't sure if it was his worst self or something apart from him. It was as though he were split in two. He felt a yearning in his heart to heed Obi-Wan's call, to go and sit beside the Jedi Master again and feel the calm of his presence. Yet something wild in him was contemptuous of that choice. Suddenly he's afraid of Obi-Wan, and there are just too many feelings he's feeling to analyse. He says he can't, he's still tracking the list of Force sensitives, and Obi-Wan says that he hasn't found any, and he investigated the most promising. And Ferus argues there are more, and Obi-Wan tells him that the Jedi that there are either dead or in hiding. And Ferus again says he's trying to find the ones who are alive, and Obi-Wan says that he's trying to regain what he has lost, and he should know better than to try for the impossible, and he tries to convince him to come to Tatooine again, but Ferus says he wants to fight, he wants to stay so he can take down Vader and Palpatine. Obi-Wan says, you think you are able to take out down Palpatine, he already knows your double game. It says, do you think Palpatine, Lord Sidious, is playing your double game? Ferus says it's possible that he suspects, and Obi-Wan says he knows. He knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the reason he's still alive, because he does know, and he has a plan for him, and he's nothing but patience, because he plotted for years to destroy the Jedi, and he'll do this slowly as well, and he doesn't know why he's playing with Ferus, but he's most certainly playing with him. And he says, it is the Sith way to play beings off each other, to stir up hatreds and rivalries. Believe me, he is working on you. And Ferus says he can't corrupt him. No, Obi-Wan says that the fact you are so confident is part of his plan. He knows he left the Jedi Order. He knows he wants to be a Jedi again. And he will speak of him, he will speak of the Force to him. Tell him how he can use it. And tell him how he can use it. And he says, he's already spoken of it, hasn't he? And Ferus feels a spasm of pain hit him as he says the words, no. Because he's never lied to Obi-Wan before. And Ferus continues to urge him to come see him and leave the Empire, and his mission on Alderaan is complete. And Ferus feels the same confusion again, the wanting to go, but feeling like he can't. And he just says, I can't. And that's where we end off the chapter. You really see Ferus's... Again... Ferus and Obi-Wan, they're such a funny pairing because of the whole thing of them, of Ferus just always learning something that Obi-Wan's hid from him and getting so frustrated by it. It's such a funny thing and it never gets old to read it. Especially because it's for Ferus and Obi-Wan's just as calm as ever, as if it's nothing shocking, even if it was shocking to him, you know. Of course, it's not shocking to him now, but you know what I mean. It was so, you know, that the whole revelation for Ferus is funny just because, you know, it's Ferus and Obi-Wan. Again, Obi-Wan knows best in this situation, and I think, and Ferus knows that. He knows that, but of course he still feels like he's got to rescue the Jedi, but Obi-Wan's trying to make it clear to him that it's useless to try and find the Jedi at the moment. They're too hard to find. Even though, you know, that's kind of the entire point of the Inquisitors, but and you know, in Legends there's like 40-50 members of the Inquisitors, and lots of them are former Jedi. Now that's kind of like the implication, I think. Not all of them are former Jedi. Not all of them have been confirmed, but anyway. But, you know, Obi-Wan, he knows, he's knowing best in this situation, and Ferus, you know, you can tell he knows that. You can tell he knows Obi-Wan knows best, but he's struggling to bring himself to acting on that. He still is tempted by that urge that he's got the list of Force sensitives at his fingers. He's almost just able to reach and finds out who they are, but he just can't, because everyone keeps on trying to convince him, and to him, you know, it's frustrating because I've got the Force sensitives right here, I can go investigate them. It will not take me long to go and investigate them. So you understand Ferus's frustration, but you also understand, from everyone's perspective, they're more than likely just false leads. And even says that you search the most promising on Order One. So it's going to be interesting to see where this all might lead, what this book's really going to be about, because we don't really know what this book's going to be about. There was no implication for what it would be about at the end of the last book. There's no implication here. And I know it took a couple chapters for Secret Weapon to establish what Ferus's storyline was about, but you know, the next chapter is focusing with Ferus on Coruscant, so I think that's more just going to be him learning that thinking that the Erased are dead, rather than actually telling us what the book's going to be about. So I have no idea what's happening in this book, but I assume we're probably going to start seeing Palpatine start making some of his final moves on Ferus to manipulate him to the dark side, you know, and I think Ferus is maybe in a little bit of denial. You know, he knows everyone knows best, and he thinks he's incorruptible, but I think you can kind of tell that he knows he's slowly being corrupted, especially by the holocron itself, and that he may not have been immediately aware to it before, but he may be aware to it now. You know, he knew the holocron was pushing him to the dark side, but he was having an influence on him. But maybe now he's going to be a lot more aware to it. We'll see. This chapter did feel like it ended a bit abruptly. It definitely felt like there could have been a bit more to it. But you know, it's not the worst thing ever. I think though that's going to bring an end to this review. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. So yeah. So thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello everyone. So I've just read chapter 2 of Last of the Jedi Reckoning. Let me get over to that page. So Ferus has arrived on Coruscant, and I completely forgot that in the last book he was told about the Bugger's Alley accident. But anyway, he's back on Coruscant, and we're told a bit more about the Orange District and how you had to know the routes to get there. And if you stumbled upon it, you'd more than likely turn around and leave, and go the way you came. He's landed at a hangar that pretty much avoids official check-in procedures, and we're told it's a dank dark hole of a hangar, but everybody there looks the other way when you arrive. And again, we're going through Bugger's Alley, and we're told that it was a perfect place for a secret meeting. They had to scramble to find a place. However, given Dexter Jett's safe house was raided by the Empire, and we're told how Ferus had briefly believed that Keats, Curran, and Dex were dead, but Keats had sent a message over to Orion that he, Curran, and Dex was safe and in hiding, and that's a relief. But they're still wondering where Astrid and Clive are, because they're still missing. And Keats said that they'd gone off on some bank account to check on some bank accounts on Hero 11, and they just haven't been heard from since. And again, Ferus is worried about his friends, given in the short time he'd been acting as a double agent, he'd seen the Empire up close. He'd seen how ruthlessly efficient they are, how effective their communications are, and how streamlined their structural power is. And it seems like Vader is everywhere. and he enforces, threatens, and brought down the might of the Empire on those who defies it. And Ferus just has trouble connecting Vader with Anakin. He just we're told how how he had his problems with Anakin, and they have been the petty rivals of two boys, and how he had seen something dark in him, but never considered it to be the kind of darkness that would lead him down to the dark side and swallow all of his goodness. And we're told that he'd been thinking for so long, if he knew who Vader was, he thinks he would have the key to destroying Vader, but now he's not so sure. And we're told that not all of his memories of Anakin are bad, but there have been many times they worked well together, and he admired Anakin, and it was hard not to. Most of the Padawans did. And yeah, how he had many close friends like True Velt and Darathel Tanis, and he wonders how he could have become Vader and left so much goodness behind. He makes his way through the alleys of the Orange District, and we're told that Orion had set up a meeting using the old contact from the Clone Wars, and they could use the back room of his shop for a meeting, but only if they never came back. And first finds the place, and he tells the owner he's looking for parts for an old CZ droid, and the owner doesn't even look at him, and he points to them the back of the shop. And it's again best if he doesn't look, if he doesn't see what the faces of the people are. First pushes through the drawer steel door, and Orion steps forward to greet him, and Trevor is behind him, and he's relieved. First slings an arm around Trevor's shoulders, and he says, "I just asked you to do surveillance, not the job." And Trevor looks a bit sad from the remark, and Ferus realises, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea to say. Because he meant it as a joke. And we're told how he had only asked him to observe what kind of security Jenners and Arbor had. But Trevor had done that and more, and how he and Rygao had rescued Lin and Outry. And now we're told he didn't only just want to say the right thing here. He wanted to say the perfect thing. And he says, because we're told how Trevor had blasted into his life like a lightning storm, unpredictable and intense. He had lost his entire family, and though he had become a street thief and con, he had also become a hero. He just didn't know it yet. Ferus says, "You always surprise me. Might have been more than I ask. More than I imagine anyone could do. I depend on you for that." And you can see his words, "Please, Trevor." And Trevor says, "I wish you could have been there. Rygao wasn't exactly overflowing with conversation." And Rygao says, "Most people talk too much," and Trevor goes, "Oh, of course, the Jedi hearing. Can't remember about that Jedi hearing." And Rygao comes forward, and Ferus notices he has a bit of affection in his eyes when he looks at Trevor. And Ferus hasn't seen that in Rygao since he had his apprentice True Veld. And Ferus says he wants to thank him for rescuing Lin and Outry, and he always regretted leaving her with son Arbor, and Rygao assures him that they're safe, and that he handed over the memory agents to Mallory Lands, if you remember, from Against the Empire. She was the cousin, I think it was, of Ronan's. How could I forget Ron's name? I was devastated when he died. But he says he handed over the memory agent to Mallory Lands for study, and he says that he thinks they should destroy it once she's had a look at it, and he thinks it would be dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands, and Ferus agrees. Rygao says that day when they rescued Lina, and this is merely a feeling, but Vader seemed intent on getting that memory agent, and it seemed personal, not just for the use of the Empire. And Ferus finds that interesting and wonders what Vader could have done that he wanted to forget so badly. And he wonders if it's connected to why he became Sith. And that's when Keats and Curran burst in. Again, we're told that they narrowly escaped death or capture by the Empire, and everyone's glad to see them. And Trevor asks how Dex is, because remember he got shot, and Curran says, "Recovering. He was hit by blaster fire, and it took a while to get him to a safe place to be treated. Mallory has come every day, and he's made incredible progress. He's already bellowing his lungs out for bantha burgers." Keats reported. Again, Keats, I don't know why, but I always find him funny. And Keats, Ferus nods over to Keats, drawing away from the hubbub, from the crowd. And he asks if he remembers Anakin. It's reminded about how before dropping out and becoming part of the Erased. I'll just read this. Before dropping out and becoming part of the Erased, Keats had been a muckraking political journalist. He knew more secrets about Galactic City than anyone. And Keats goes, of course, the great hero of the Clone Wars. He defeated Count Dooku. And Ferus asks if he heard any gossip about his personal life. And Keats goes, well, sure, the Senate was my beat, and it's a very small place despite being gigantic. There was some talk about him and Senator Amidala. And Ferus goes, Padme, and he's surprised, and he thinks he shouldn't be surprised. Because, of course, that's why Obi-Wan has sent him to Naboo. But from what I remember, he was not sent to Naboo. He heard information about, he heard about Malorum's investigation on Naboo, didn't he? And Obi-Wan had told him that if any information comes close to Padme Amidala to make his way there, you know. If Malorum gets close to Padme Amidala to intercept him as well, there as well. So, yeah, from what I remember, that's what it was. Obi-Wan didn't technically send him on the mission, but yeah. But anyway, Keats says, I even heard rumours of a secret marriage, but I can't confirm that. I wasn't digging into senators' personal lives. I always liked Senator Amidala. She had principles. And Ferus says the official word is that a Jedi killed her, but he thinks that can't be true, and Keats doesn't believe it either. And he doesn't know how he dies because things were getting confusing towards the end of the Clone Wars. And Olian says that we should talk about the next step for Moonstrike. We don't have this room for long. And Keats says that before they start the meeting, he and Cohen have something to say. They've talked to Dex, and they think it's best if they decided to pull out a Moonstrike. Because since they've started working together on the Resistance, things have changed. And they think it's best, and they think the best thing to do is to go underground for now and wait for a more organised resistance to rise. And Olin says, but don't you want to be a part of that? And Keats says, of course they do, but they'll only endanger them if they stayed, because the attack by the Empire was the Empire clearly knew what they were hitting when they made that attack. And they got to lay low to protect what little organisation they have. And Cohen says they're always available to help, but they'll be searching for a new place to live in the sub-levels. The others exchange glances, and Ferus knows what they're all thinking. They weren't expecting this pull-out, and they're wondering if it's the beginning of the end, that for an end they can't see. And quietly, Keats and Cohen leave them. And Orion says that Moonstrike can still go on, and he says to Ferus that they got 3 new members when they were on Alderaan. And that Flame is starting to line up some corporations, and she's had a meeting with the scientists from on Somalia and Moshe, and that they're eager to meet and exchange their technologies to create a super droid, to create that super droid you talked about on Somalia, which I completely forgot about, but I'm so glad it's being brought back up again. So, if you don't remember, that super droid that Olian's talking about here, Ferus... The reason why the Empire didn't want Roche and Somalia to get together to combine to come into a peace treaty and merge their technologies in the first place was because the way the Roche droids work, you know, they can send information from one droid to another. They can kind of like read what each other knows, and it's how they can be so precise. Well, the droids in Somalia, you know, they transfer. They're pretty much everyone's personal assistants. They even in they're pretty much their wallets, you know, so they can transfer information. So if you bought a cup of tea, you could but the droids on the Roche are so small they can't contain much information. They can't contain like loads of information. But the Somalian droids, you know, they can contain that information. So if they have the information capacity of Somalian droids and the ability to consume information of the motion droids, then they could overwhelm systems, pretty much short systems out, and pretty much disable systems. And that's why the Empire do not want them crossing their technologies. If you so, there we go. Good. I've decided I thought I'll remind you here, because it has been like the last when I read Return of the Dark Side. You know, that was at the start of the month for me. So it's the 25th of February. You know, it's been about 11 days since, not 11, 21 days since I read Against the Empire. So, you know, just reminding you, because it hasn't really been brought up since that chapter, which was like chapter 18, I think. Anyway. Anyway, Orion says that they're eager, the scientists from Somalia and Roshar, they're eager to meet and combine their technologies to make that droid, and Trevor says there's plenty of good stuff going on, it just feels hard to feel good when Dex, Cohen and Keats aren't part of it. And Orion says that they still need a place for the meeting and they haven't been able to agree on where, and Ferus knows what Orion's implying. And it says, the success of the first Moonstrike meeting now rested with him. He had a safe place, a secret base on the asteroid. He had almost run through the list of the Force sensitives. He hasn't had any success in locating any additional Jedi. He stood. Alright, contact the others. Tell them we have a safe place to meet. He says to offer them Jedi escorts. He, Solus and Mygal will be their escorts, and they can take them to the asteroid. And no one must know but them where they are going. And once they get it all set up, they'll be on comm silence until they get there. Olian nods and says it's a good plan, and all they need are ships. And Trevor says Flame can help them with that. And Olian says she's waiting for their signal. And he gets her on the holo transmission. And first quickly tells her that they had agreed to have the Moonstrike meeting on the secret base, and Olian says I'll need ships and fast ones, and Flame nods and tells them that she'll get them ships, and Ferus says that it's not only the ships, they'll need to be registered ships, because they'll have to go through Imperial checkpoints, and with 3 ships picking up that many beings, the odds of dodging Imperial checks are not good. Flame thinks for a moment and then smiles and says she has an idea. I'm really not trusting Flame now that we're on the last book. And I know what happens to the Jedi asteroid. I want to make that very clear. I know exactly what happens to it. Just how it happens, I don't know. But I'm still very suspicious of Flame. I'm even more suspicious now that we're on the last book. And it really feels like it's going to be Clive and Astrid figure out what it is, get the communication to Ferus and the gang, just a bit too late, and it's all they all get this. So I'm really not trusting Flame. I'm really not trusting her, especially because I accidentally spoiled myself on her. I've tried to forget about the spoiler on her. I've tried to. I just haven't been able to forget. And again at least with Toma, I can't see it. I can't believe it with being Toma, but for Flame, I definitely think it could be Flame. She definitely could be a spy. But yeah, again, it was nice for all the characters to learn that, you know, Keats and Cohen are fine. I'm so glad it was sorted out this early in the book. I'm so glad it was sorted out this early in the book. I do not think I could have bared the fact. Like, I don't think I could have bared it if it was just, if they didn't learn any sooner. And especially because, you know, poor Trevor, you know, he was devastated, and Trevor's gone through enough. He's gone through enough loss. So yeah, I do think it was wise for them to back out a Moonstrike as well, you know. But it's nice to see like everyone coming together. You know, not everyone's there. You know, Solace for some reason. Where is Solace? Actually, where is Will? Where is Will Asani? He was there at the end of the last book. He was with the Erased in Thugger's Alley at the end of Against the Empire. Sorry, not last book, Against the Empire. Where is Will Asani? He hasn't been mentioned since Against the Empire. He hasn't been in the books since Against the Empire. Where is Will? Was he there in the meeting? It's not mentioned anywhere in the meeting. Where's Will? Where is he? Where is he? He just hasn't been there. But you know, we're bringing up Mallory Laddens, who hasn't been brought up since Against the Empire and hasn't been relevant since Against the Empire. But you know, Will, he feels like he should have had way more precedence in the last book. Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic here. I quite enjoy this chapter again, and again, it feels like a very nice coming together of all the characters. It feels like something that will be in the last book, and it feels very both reassuring and reaffirming at the start, and of course as it goes on with Keats and Curran backing out, you know, it does feel a bit sad. And I think this chapter has a good blend of the mystery, of the good, of the sad. This chapter did quite a bit of everything and did quite well with it. So yeah, it definitely felt like a nice big coming together, which I think, you know, this last book probably needs. So yeah. What else? 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 Again, Ferus knows a little bit about a secret marriage, kind of. It's funny that he's almost knows as much as Malorum now. You know, Malorum knew Vader's identity as Anakin and that he has a secret marriage. But thing is, he doesn't. The thing is, Ferus doesn't know about this child. He doesn't know about the child. Or the children. But mind you, Malorum only knew about a child, not two. He didn't know there were two. Anyway. I think that will bring an end to this review. So, again, I don't have a whole lot else to say. At least we know what the book's going to be about now. You know, setting up that first Moonstrike meeting. But yeah, anyway. Thank you all for watching. And goodbye.